August 13, 2018. A quiet Monday morning in Frederick, Colorado, shattered by an urgent call. Shannon Watts, 34, and her two young daughters, Bella, 4, and Celeste, 3, were reported missing. The alarm was raised not by her husband, Chris Watts, but by Shannon's friend, Nicole Kessinger, who grew concerned when Shannon failed to attend a crucial doctor's appointment. The initial hours of this case would set the stage for a tragic unraveling, bringing investigators to a seemingly ordinary family home with an unsettling absence. In the immediate aftermath, Chris Watts, Shannon's husband, became the central figure. He informed authorities that Shannon and the girls had simply vanished after he left for work that morning. Watts presented a calm, albeit distraught, facade to local news outlets, appealing directly to the public for their safe return. He described Shannon's last known actions, returning home around 2 a.m. after a business trip, followed by an emotional conversation between them. This early narrative would soon face intense scrutiny. The first official response came from Officer Troy Rodriguez of the Frederick Police Department. His bodycam footage captured the initial interaction with Chris Watts. The Watts home, surprisingly tidy, raised immediate questions. Officer Rodriguez observed Watts' composure, noting it seemed unusually calm given the circumstances. Chris reiterated his account, pointing out Shannon had left behind her phone, keys, and wallet, items she rarely, if ever, went without. These details fueled the nascent suspicions of the responding officers. As the investigation commenced, the Frederick Police Department, aided by the FBI and Colorado Bureau of Investigation, cast a wider net. A critical piece of early evidence emerged from a neighbor's surveillance camera. The footage, captured at 5:18 a.m. on August 13, showed Chris Watts backing his truck up to the garage. This action was noted by investigators as unusually early for him, deviating from his stated routine. The seemingly innocuous act became a focal point, contradicting Watts' narrative and hinting at activity he hadn't disclosed. The more Chris Watts spoke, the more discrepancies emerged. His accounts of the emotional conversation with Shannon lacked specific detail, and his calm demeanor in front of the cameras seemed at odds with a man whose entire family had vanished. Investigators began to probe these inconsistencies, observing his body language and responses carefully. Each omitted detail, each vague statement, started to build a pattern that moved Watts from a grieving husband to a person of interest. The focus of the investigation was slowly, but surely, shifting. On August 15, 2018, as the search for Shannon, Bella, and Celeste intensified, Chris Watts agreed to undergo a polygraph test. This was a critical juncture in the investigation. During the test, Watts continued to deny any involvement in his family's disappearance. However, according to investigators, his physiological responses indicated deception when questioned about his knowledge of Shannon's whereabouts and whether he had harmed his family. The results of the polygraph added significant weight to the growing suspicions held by law enforcement. The polygraph test significantly tightened the investigative focus on Chris Watts. Simultaneously, another crucial piece of information emerged. Investigators discovered Chris was engaged in an extramarital affair. His girlfriend, Nicole Kessinger, was contacted by police. Kessinger, unaware of the full scope of Watts' double life, cooperated fully with authorities. She told police that Chris had claimed he and Shannon were in the process of separating, a claim that directly contradicted Watts' public appeals and earlier statements about their emotional conversation. With the polygraph results indicating deception and the revelation of his affair, the pressure on Chris Watts intensified dramatically. Investigators, armed with these new details, understood they were closing in. They brought Watts in for further questioning, systematically dismantling his narrative piece by piece. The calm facade he had maintained began to crack under the weight of the evidence and the relentless, yet measured, interrogation techniques employed by the agents. The room filled with impalpable tension as the truth edged closer to the surface. As the interrogation reached a critical point, investigators made a tactical decision. They brought in Chris's father, Ronnie Watts, believing his presence might encourage a confession. The hope was that in the privacy of a conversation with his own father, Chris would finally break. This moment proved pivotal. The raw emotion and familial connection were intended to bypass the defenses Chris had built, potentially leading to the admissions investigators desperately sought. The strategy was a calculated risk, but one that yielded a profound and devastating result. In the interrogation room, face to face with his father, Ronnie Watts, Chris finally confessed. He admitted to killing Shannon. The confession was a deeply personal and agonizing moment, yet it lacked the full truth. This initial admission, however incomplete, provided the breakthrough investigators had been working towards. It confirmed their suspicions and transformed the missing persons case into a homicide investigation. The weight of his actions began to manifest, and the carefully constructed lie started to collapse under the crushing reality. Following his admission to his father, Chris Watts was ready to speak to investigators. He gave an official confession to CBI agent Tammy Lee and FBI agent Graham Coder. In this confession, Watts offered a chilling, albeit partial, account. He claimed that Shannon had strangled their two daughters, Bella and Celeste, after he told her he wanted a separation. In a supposed fit of rage upon witnessing this, Watts claimed he then strangled Shannon. This version of events, though horrific, would later be revealed as another layer of deception. Chris Watts' initial confession, blaming Shannon for the children's deaths, was a desperate attempt to mitigate his culpability. Investigators, however, were highly skeptical. The narrative of Shannon, a loving mother, suddenly strangling her own children in front of her husband, then being killed by him in a rage, felt deeply implausible. This story, though offered as a confession, contained significant red flags for experienced homicide detectives. It indicated a continued effort by Watts to control the narrative and deflect the full truth of his actions. As part of his confession and a developing plea agreement, Chris Watts agreed to lead investigators to the location of his family's bodies. This was a critical step, confirming the grim reality of their fate. He directed them to a remote Anadarko petroleum oil field, an isolated area where he worked. The journey to the site, captured by police, was a silent and chilling testament to the final moments of Shannon, Bella, and Celeste. The landscape itself, barren and industrial, seemed to reflect the desolate nature of the crime. Upon arrival at the oil field, Chris Watts showed investigators where he had buried Shannon. Her body was found in a shallow grave, a stark and desolate burial site. The discovery sent a wave of grief and horror through the community and across the nation, confirming the worst fears. Investigators meticulously documented the scene, gathering forensic evidence that would prove crucial in corroborating Watts' confession and painting a clearer picture of the final moments of Shannon Watts. The desolate location mirrored the emptiness left by her absence. The horror deepened with the discovery of Bella and Celeste. Chris Watts revealed he had placed his daughters' bodies inside separate oil tanks at the same remote site. The industrial containers, designed for storing crude oil, became the final, undignified resting place for the two young girls. This revelation shocked even seasoned investigators. The sheer inhumanity of the act, disposing of his own children in such a manner, spoke volumes about the depravity of the crime. The scene was meticulously processed, each detail a painful piece of evidence. With the bodies recovered, the focus shifted to understanding the motive behind such an heinous crime. Early speculation among investigators centered on Watts' affair with Nicole Kessinger and his desire to escape his family life. The prospect of starting fresh, free from the responsibilities of marriage and parenthood, appeared to be a driving force. Coupled with existing financial difficulties, including a bankruptcy filing in 2015, the picture began to form of a man overwhelmed and seeking a drastic, violent solution to his perceived problems. This was the initial framework for Watts' actions. Faced with overwhelming evidence and his own confession, Chris Watts entered a plea agreement. On November 6, 2018, he pleaded guilty to multiple counts of first-degree murder, unlawful termination of a pregnancy, as Shannon was 15 weeks pregnant, and tampering with deceased human bodies. This plea spared the Watts and Rzusek families the trauma of a protracted trial. In exchange for his guilty plea, the prosecution agreed not to seek the death penalty, a decision that aimed to provide some measure of closure without further prolonging the legal process. For his heinous crimes, Chris Watts received a sentence commensurate with their severity. He was handed 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole. This included 1 life sentence for each of the murders of Shannon, Bella, and Celeste, an additional life sentence for the unlawful termination of Shannon's pregnancy, and a 5th life sentence for the 3 counts of tampering with deceased human bodies. The judicial system delivered the maximum possible punishment, ensuring Watts would spend the remainder of his life incarcerated for the atrocities he committed against his family. Months after his conviction, in February 2019, Chris Watts provided a far more detailed and truthful confession to investigators. This time, he admitted the full, horrifying sequence of events. Watts revealed he had first strangled Shannon, then smothered Bella and Celeste. He confessed to planning the murders, contradicting his earlier claims of a spontaneous rage. This later confession filled crucial gaps, offering a chilling insight into the premeditation and the cold, calculated nature of his actions. It was a final, devastating account of the complete truth. This later confession solidified the understanding of premeditation. Watts' admission of planning the murders starkly contrasted with his initial defense of an impulsive act. It illustrated a chilling detachment and a cold calculation in his desire to remove his family from his life. The details he provided, from the method of killing each victim to the disposal of their bodies, removed any lingering doubt about his intent. This final, brutal account underscored the depth of his deception and the extent of his depravity, forever altering the perception of his crime. With the complete confession, the full tapestry of Watts' motives became clear. It was a convergence of financial stress, a desire to fully commit to his affair with Nicole Kessinger, and a profound selfishness that led him to believe a new life was only possible through the elimination of his existing family. He saw his wife and children as obstacles to his personal freedom and happiness. This devastating combination of factors paints a portrait of a man who chose the darkest path imaginable to escape his responsibilities. The success of the Chris Watts investigation hinged on precise interrogation tactics. Agents Tammy Lee and Graham Coder meticulously built rapport, presented evidence strategically, and utilized psychological pressure, culminating in the introduction of Watts' father. They observed his tells, exploited his inconsistencies, and slowly chipped away at his fabricated narrative. This case serves as a stark example of how skilled investigative interviewing, combined with forensic evidence, can break through layers of deception to uncover the truth, even in the most horrific circumstances. Officer Troy Rodriguez's bodycam footage played an indispensable role in the early stages of the Watts investigation. It captured Chris Watts' initial demeanor, his seemingly calm and collected responses, and his almost theatrical appeals for his family's return. This raw, unedited footage provided investigators with invaluable real-time observations, offering a baseline for Watts' behavior before the pressure mounted. It highlighted inconsistencies between his words and his apparent lack of genuine distress, becoming an immediate red flag that shaped the subsequent investigative path. The conviction of Chris Watts was built upon a mountain of accumulated evidence. Beyond his own confessions, investigators gathered crucial details: the neighbor's surveillance footage, the discovery of Shannon's abandoned personal items, the failed polygraph, and forensic evidence from the oil field. Each piece, no matter how small, contributed to an irrefutable case against him. This systematic collection and analysis of evidence left no room for doubt about Watts' culpability, leading directly to his guilty plea and subsequent life sentences. Chris Watts' case has been extensively studied for its psychological implications. His ability to maintain a facade of normalcy while planning and executing such horrific crimes speaks to a profound psychological disconnect. Experts point to traits like narcissism, a lack of empathy, and a strong desire to control his narrative. His calculated deception, blaming his wife for the children's deaths, further highlights a deep-seated pathology. The case remains a chilling example of a family annihilator, driven by a self-serving desire for a different life. The Watts murders profoundly impacted the tight-knit community of Frederick, Colorado, and resonated across the nation. The sheer brutality and the betrayal of family trust left many grappling with disbelief and sorrow. Vigils were held, and memorials established for Shannon, Bella, and Celeste. The case became a chilling reminder that evil can reside in seemingly ordinary homes, shattering the illusion of safety and leaving a lasting scar on those who followed the unfolding tragedy. The memory of the innocent victims remains a stark reminder. Nicole Kessinger, Chris Watts' mistress, played a crucial, albeit unwitting, role in the unraveling of his deception. Her cooperation with police, revealing Watts' claims of separation, directly contradicted his public persona and private statements to investigators. Her testimony helped to establish a clear motive for Watts' actions and painted him as a man driven by a desire to begin a new life, free from his existing family. Kessinger herself was cleared of any involvement in the murders, having been deceived by Watts' elaborate lies. The Watts family home, once a symbol of domesticity, became a crime scene and a focal point of public scrutiny. Officer Rodriguez's bodycam showed the house in its initial, deceptively tidy state. This home, where Chris Watts committed the first of his murders, holds a chilling history. It became a site of profound tragedy, forever associated with the disappearance and death of Shannon, Bella, and Celeste. The very walls bore silent witness to the beginning of a horrific sequence of events, a place where evil took root. Shannon Watts' friend, Nicole Kessinger, was the one who initially raised the alarm. It was her concern for Shannon missing a doctor's appointment, a routine yet vital event, that triggered the missing persons report. This seemingly small detail proved to be the critical first domino. Her instinct that something was deeply wrong, a gut feeling that transcended the calm exterior Chris Watts presented, directly led to the police involvement and the subsequent unearthing of the truth. Without her intervention, the timeline of the investigation could have been drastically different. The emotional toll on the investigators working the Chris Watts case was immense. Dealing with the brutal murder of a pregnant mother and two young children tests the resolve of even the most seasoned officers. CBI agent Tammy Lee and FBI agent Graham Coder, who secured the initial confession, bore witness to the depths of Watts' depravity. Their professionalism and dedication, even in the face of such horror, underscore the burden carried by law enforcement officials who must confront the darkest aspects of human nature to deliver justice. The Chris Watts case captivated and horrified the public, sparking widespread discussion about domestic violence, infidelity, and the nature of evil. News reports, documentaries, and podcasts have since dissected every detail, attempting to understand the incomprehensible. The case became a touchstone for examining the hidden dangers within seemingly normal families and the devastating consequences of unchecked selfishness. Public fascination, while sometimes morbid, also served to ensure the victims' stories were not forgotten and justice was clearly seen to be served. The legal process in the Chris Watts case moved relatively swiftly once his confession and the bodies were discovered. The overwhelming evidence led to a plea agreement, avoiding a lengthy trial. Watts' guilty plea to multiple murder charges, including the unlawful termination of a pregnancy, highlighted the specific legal avenues available to prosecutors in such complex cases. The 5 life sentences without parole represented the full extent of the state's punitive power, ensuring that Watts would never again walk free, a legal resolution that brought a form of finality. Beyond the details of the investigation and the horrific crimes, it is crucial to remember Shannon, Bella, and Celeste Watts. Shannon, an active and vibrant woman, was 15 weeks pregnant with a son she planned to name Nico. Bella, 4, and Celeste, 3, were described as energetic and loving children. Their lives, brutally cut short, represent an immense loss. This case is a testament to their existence and a stark reminder of the devastating impact of domestic violence and family annihilation. Their memory continues to resonate. The Chris Watts interrogation and subsequent confessions laid bare a chilling truth: a seemingly ordinary man, driven by selfish desires, systematically murdered his entire family. From his initial calm demeanor to his desperate, evolving lies, every step of his deception was meticulously dismantled by investigators. The case stands as a powerful, unsettling examination of human depravity and the rigorous process of justice, reminding us that appearances can be profoundly deceptive. The truth, however ugly, always finds a way to surface.